My name is Sydney, and I will be doing my chapter presentation on Chapter 4, Social Cognition and Person Perception. So here's a little guide. The vocab will be highlighted in yellow, and the key takeaways and topics will be bolded, and I will have 2 discussion questions at the end of my presentation. So the first topic is categorizing. A category is a mental grouping of objects, ideas, or events that share common properties. Categorization allows us to generalize from one experience to another, making it possible to assign meaning to novel stimuli. We also naturally form categories about people based upon their common attributes. This process is called social categorization. When categorizing, we like to rely on physical features such as sex and race. By doing this so often, it becomes a habit, and we do it without conscious thought or effort. And you may not realize it, but we tend to do it on a daily basis. And a lot of people don't even realize it until you hear of it now. The most representative member of a category is known as a prototype, which is a mental model that stands for or symbolizes the category. Prototype category is an example of why female doctors are mistaken as nurses and how male nurses are mistaken as doctors. And this is how miscategorization comes into place, because we just assume based off what we know and what we see. The types of schemas. Now I'll be talking about implicit cognition and the different types of schemas that come into place. Implicit cognition allows us to group objects, ideas, or events into categories, and also to develop theories about these categories. A schema is an organized structure of knowledge about a stimulus that is built up from experience and that contains causal relations. It is a theory about how the social world operates. We also have schemas about ourselves, which are called self-schemas, which are personal attributes with which we identify. Gender schemas are cognitive structures for processing information based off perceived female or male qualities. A script describes how a series of events is likely to occur in a well-known situation. We use scripts in everyday life, and a lot of people don't even notice that we're using it, but it comes out in like every public situation that we're put in. So a schema is used as a guide for behavior in a problem-solving situation. We have these scripts for when we eat dinner with our family, when we go out to restaurants, attending a class, going to a dentist or a doctor's appointment, or going to your job or your job interview, stuff like that. That's when scripts come into place. The process by which recent exposure to certain stimuli or events increasing the accessibility of certain memories, categories, or schemas is known as priming. Now, the different types of heuristics, representativeness heuristic is the tendency to judge the category membership of things based on how closely they match the prototype of that category. The representativeness heuristic helps people quickly decide in what categories to place others. It's kind of like stereotyping, but in reverse. And the availability heuristic is the tendency to judge the frequency or probability of an event in terms of how easy it is to think of examples of that event. Anchoring and adjustment heuristic is an estimate of a numerical value that is influenced by a number or unrelated number before the estimate. Deliberate thinking of past events. This is where bias and different types of thinking come into place. Hindsight bias is learning the outcome of the event after it has happened and knowing it was going to happen. It's kind of like those moments where you're like, oh, I knew that was going to happen. Like, you kind of have like, you think you have like this overconfidence in that you can like predict the future. It's kind of like that feeling that we always have. and it can help us avoid future problems and can help us feel better. This bias develops by the age of 3 and is more pronounced among preschoolers and elderly adults due to enhanced memory problems at these ages. Counterfactual thinking, which is the tendency to evaluate events by imagining alternative versions of outcomes. We are most likely to engage in counterfactual thinking in negative or unexpected events and to prevent the negative outcome. This helps us in the future and could help us feel better and help us can prevent things from happening. Thought suppression. Thought suppression is a good example of explicit and implicit cognition working to prevent unwelcome thoughts from entering your consciousness. This requires your thought to be focused on an unwanted thought. When suppression thoughts end, your thoughts rebound back into your consciousness. Forming impressions of others. Person perception is the process by which we detect other people's temporary states, such as their emotions, intentions, and desires, and their enduring dispositions, such as their beliefs, traits, and abilities, along with their actions. Person perception is also integrative, meaning that each bit of information about a person is interpreted within the context of all the other information we have about him or her. Non-conscious mimicry, which is the tendency to adopt the behaviors, postures, or mannerisms of interaction partners without conscious awareness or intention. Person perception. First phase is nonverbal communication, which is sending and receiving of information using gestures, expressions, vocal cues, and body movements rather than words. Facial expressions are signals to others. We tend to communicate a lot by just the look on our face. It's like that expression where people say like, oh, I could read you like a book, because you can tell without saying any words if someone's happy or sad or mad or tired. Like you could tell by reading their face and their body language, etc. Like a smile, you could tell when someone's happy because they're smiling. You could see anger, they're mad. You could see that from their face. You could tell when someone's sad if they're frowning. You could tell when someone's surprised if they're have their eyes wide open and their mouth open and their eyebrows raised. You could tell. Body movements are body cues that can convey information as well. Kind of like talking about body language, like you could tell when someone's like down, you could tell by their body language. You could tell if someone's up and happy, they have good posture. People who walk with a hip sway, knee bending, loose jointedness, and body bounce are perceived to be younger. Body movements are fast, energetic, and spatially expansive signals to observers that the person displaying these movements is angry rather than sad or bored. Social roles. A social role is a cluster of socially defined expectations that individuals in a given situation are expected to fulfill. Next is the social role theory. The social role theory is the different social roles occupied by women and men led to differences in the perceptions of their behavior. In society, social roles differ between men and women. Next, we have talking about behavior, more focusing on negativity and like gossip behavior. So negativity overweighs positive in making impressions. It can signal danger behavior. I've always believed that negative energy outweighs the positive. It's easier for someone to be negative than it is for them to be positive. Negative energy is more contagious, and if one person is down, it causes the next person to be down. It's kind of like domino effect, but it always outweighs the positive energy, and it could result into danger behavior. Gossip is a frequent way of conveying and receiving negative information. Gossiping has become such a popular pastime for humans beings, not simply because we enjoyed learning about the personal flaws of others, but because we are given the new information that we didn't know before. Next is implicit personality theories and central traits. We are motivated to learn more about these people as individuals. Our thinking becomes more deliberate and effortless, which leads our impressions becoming more abstract and less tied to physical qualities. Qualities such as the word intelligent and kind and powerful. Dominant traits are called the central traits. Central traits are characteristics that are more descriptive of an individual personality. Implicit personality theories are a type of schema. Implicit personality theories are shaped by both personal experiences and cultural beliefs, and they are often passed from generation to generation. Now, talking about the different types of bias and attributions. Confirmation bias seeks out confirming information to avoid disconfirming information. So we look to see for the answers just because we don't want to be wrong. We are more likely to engage in confirmational bias when we are in a situation that we are personally invested in and looking for that conversation to where we're looking for the answer to be wrong or looking for a disagreement. Attribution is when we use information to make inferences about the causes of behavior or events. Internal attribution is behavior caused by qualities of the person, so focusing more on personality or effort. External attribution is behavior caused by the outside factors, so talking about the actions of other people, the luck, and the nature of the situation. So next, talk about covariation model and attributions. Covariation model is attempts to explain attributions based on observing people over time, across situations, and in comparison to others' actions. This means they assume something to be the cause of a specific behavior and must be present to occur and absent when it does not occur. Fundamental attribution error is a tendency to overestimate the impact of dispositional causes and underestimate the impact of situational causes on other people's behavior. Actor-observer effect is to attribute our own behavior to external causes, but that to internal factors. Dual process models of attribution, both explicit cognition and implicit cognition, best explain the attribution process. This process typically occurs first and are then sometimes followed by more deliberate and effortless analysis. So overall, the one concept that reflects to my experience is I feel that after learning about categorizing and social categorization, I have noticed it does play a role in my life. I do tend to categorize people based off their physical features because I feel like it plays a role when remembering someone and painting a face to a picture when you rely on other people's physical features. There's been many instances where I remembered a person because I remember, oh, like this girl was tall and had tan skin. Oh, she had brown and blonde hair, or she wore glasses, or she had a tattoo on her arm. She had these many piercings, any of that. Those are like physical features that we look for to pull in and take out people and categorize them in different groups because we want to remember them. These are all types of features that we look at when categorizing people. Also looking at the sex of the person and the race of the person. We also look for them. Overall, I feel like learning about this chapter, going back into it, I feel like my overall thoughts and opinions have changed so much. I've learned so much new information that I didn't know before. And especially going back into this chapter and having to actually like go through everything, read it, read back, looking at all this different information, mind-blowing to see how this affects people, and you go out like, outside this class, I've noticed how all the stuff I've learned throughout this class, it's going to a grocery store and you see people, you just, like, notice all these different things, and you connect it back to things we've learned. You notice how people present themselves, your different perceptions of people, different behaviors and categories and looks, and just how that plays a role in society, and it affects us and affects other people, and it's something that we will always take back and learn and understand. So next, I have 2 questions that you guys can answer at the end of this presentation. So my first question is, do you think you have a tendency to categorize people consciously or unconsciously? And my second question is, what is one takeaway you remember from this presentation that you will remember going forward? And that is the end of my presentation on Chapter 4, Social Cognition and Person Perception. Thank you.